Captain Joss Thorne pressed his back against the corroded wall of what had once been a residential tower in Singapore's eastern district. The rain fell in sheets through the skeletal remains of the building's upper floors, creating rivulets that carried decades of rust and debris down into the flooded streets below. His tactical scanner showed no heat signatures within a 3-block radius, but Thorne had learned not to trust technology over instinct. The city had been dead for 12 years, yet something always felt like it was watching. He adjusted the strap of his plasma rifle and checked his ammunition count. 17 charges remaining, enough to clear a path through the scavenger gangs that occasionally drifted through the dead zones. But not enough for a prolonged firefight. The Central Authority had stopped sending supply drops 6 months ago. Everyone knew what that meant, even if nobody said it aloud. Humanity was in its final phase. The mission parameters were simple: patrol the outer rim, eliminate any threats to the inner settlements, and report back every 72 hours. What the parameters didn't account for was the growing silence. On the communication channels, 3 weeks had passed since his last contact with command. Static that answered his calls had become as familiar as his own heartbeat. Thorne moved through the debris-strewn lobby, stepping carefully around. The remains of automated security systems that had failed when the power grids collapsed. Glass crunched under his boots despite his efforts at stealth. In the ruins, silence was survival, but perfect silence was impossible. He had learned to make his noise count. The eastern checkpoint was another kilometer through flooded tunnels and collapsed overpasses. He would complete his sweep, file his report to an empty frequency, and return to his shelter in the old customs building. The routine had kept him sane when everything else had fallen apart. Routine was the last discipline that separated soldiers from scavengers. A flash of movement in his peripheral vision made him freeze. Thorne raised his rifle in a fluid motion, finger moving to the trigger guard. The targeting system painted a red outline around a figure crouched behind an overturned transport pod. Human-shaped, but something about the proportions seemed off. Too tall limbs too elongated. "Stand up slowly," Thorne commanded, his voice echoing off the broken concrete. Hands visible, no sudden movements. The figure rose with deliberate grace, arms raised but not trembling. As it turned toward him, Thorne's breath caught in his throat. The being before him was clearly not human, yet disturbingly familiar. Pale. Blue skin stretched over a frame that suggested both fragility and hidden strength. Silver eyes met his without fear or pleading, only a strange kind of recognition. "Captain Thorne," the being said in a voice that carried an accent he couldn't place. "I have been waiting for you specifically. Please do not fire. I carry something that humanity cannot afford to lose." The statement hit him like a physical blow. His name spoken by a creature that should not exist, in a dead city where nothing should be alive. Thorne's training screamed at him to shoot first and investigate the corpse later. But something in those silver eyes held him back. Intelligence. Purpose. And beneath it all, something that looked disturbingly like hope. "How do you know my name?" he asked, rifle still trained on the center of the being's chest. "Because you were chosen," came the reply. "It's just as I was chosen to find you. The protocol has been waiting 12 years for this moment." Dr. Mira Kane had been living in the abandoned genetics laboratory for 8 months, surrounded by the humming of jury-rigged cryogenic units and the soft glow of specimen containers. The underground facility had survived the collapse better than most structures, its reinforced walls and independent power systems still functional thanks to her careful maintenance. She had chosen this place not for comfort, but for its potential to house the most important cargo in human history. When the pale-skinned being had approached her 3 days ago, speaking of a military captain patrolling the eastern districts, Mira had initially dismissed it as another hallucination brought on by prolonged isolation. But the being who called itself Zephyr had known details about her research that no one should have possessed. Details about the genetic samples she had salvaged from 17 different colonies before their final evacuation. "The captain will resist," Zephyr had warned her. Humans always resist what they do not understand. But his psychological profile indicates he will listen if the evidence is compelling enough. Now, as Mira monitored the meeting through Zephyr's neural link, She prepared for the most crucial presentation of her career. The samples arranged before her represented genetic material from over 10,000 individuals, the last pure human. DNA untainted by the radiation and chemical pollutants that had rendered 97% of the species sterile. Captain Thorne entered the laboratory 40 minutes later, his weapon lowered but ready. Zephyr moved beside him with that peculiar grace that marked their species. While Thorne's movements showed the controlled tension of a soldier expecting ambush at any moment, "Dr. Mira Kane," Mira said, rising from her workstation. "Xenobiology and reproductive genetics, formerly of the Mars Colonial Initiative." Thorne's eyes swept the laboratory, cataloging exits and potential threats with military precision. Wait, why with the way, why, I cried, I cried, Being claims you have something humanity needs. I'm here to determine if that's true or if you're both suffering from post-collapse psychosis. Mira gestured toward the cryogenic units.
Captain, what do you know about the fertility crisis?
Public briefings stopped 3 years ago, Thorne replied. Last reports indicated a 17% viability rate for human reproduction. The actual rate is now below 3%, Myra said quietly. The contamination has reached critical mass. Within 2 generations, human beings will be extinct through natural reproductive failure alone. She moved to the primary storage unit, her fingers dancing across the control interface. But before the final evacuations, I managed to collect genetic material from every major colony. Not just sperm and OVA, but complete genomic maps. The building blocks for rebuilding our species from the ground up. Thorne stepped closer, his tactical training warring with scientific curiosity. Rebuilding how? Even if you have the samples, we don't have the infrastructure for large-scale artificial reproduction. We don't, Mira agreed, but they do. She nodded toward Zephyr. The Keepers have been preparing for this moment for centuries. They possess biotechnology that can accelerate human development, enhance genetic diversity, and create viable populations from minimal source material. Zephyr spoke for the first time since entering the laboratory. My people have watched 17 species face extinction. 12 survived through our intervention. The protocol exists, Captain Thorne. The question is whether humanity will accept the price. Thorne's grip tightened on his rifle. What price? Mira took a breath, knowing that her next words would either secure humanity's future or end the conversation permanently. Genetic integration. The new humans won't be purely baseline. They'll carry Keeper DNA, enhanced capabilities, extended lifespans. Humanity will survive, but it will evolve. The silence stretched between them like a live wire. Thorne stared at the cryogenic units, at the soft blue glow of humanity's genetic future, processing the implications of survival through transformation. How many others know about this? He finally asked. None, Mira replied. The research was classified beyond black projects. When the evacuations began, I was ordered to destroy everything. I chose to preserve it instead. Thorne looked at Zephyr, then back at Mira. Oh, and you need me for what? I'm not a scientist. You're a soldier. Mira said, and what we're planning next is going to be war. Victor Reeves had built his empire in the spaces between collapse and chaos. The underground networks that connected Neo-Singapore's dead zones were his domain. maintained by scavenger crews who answered to no authority but profit and survival. From his command center in the old subway maintenance facility, he controlled the flow of salvage, information, and bodies throughout the ruins. The message had come through encrypted channels that hadn't been used since the corporate wars. Meeting request, coordinates in neutral territory. Signed with authentication codes that belonged to a dead woman. Dr. Myra Kane had been declared missing and presumed dead 18 months ago when her research facility went dark. Yet here was her digital signature, requesting an audience with the man who controlled the city's black market infrastructure. Victor arrived at the specified coordinates, a former shopping complex, now serving as neutral ground for interrogating. Negotiations with 6 armed escorts and full tactical awareness. The space reeked of mildew and burned electronics, but it offered good sightlines and multiple escape routes. He had survived the collapse by never walking into situations he couldn't walk out of. The woman who entered from the Eastern Passage matched archived footage of Dr. Kane, but she moved with the careful precision of someone who had learned violence the hard way. Behind her came a figure Victor recognized immediately, Captain Joss Thorne, the ghost soldier who had been patrolling the dead zones for months. The third member of their party made Victor's enhanced targeting system struggle to maintain a lock. Humanoid, but clearly not human, moving with fluid grace that suggested either cybernetic enhancement or alien physiology. Victor Reeves, Dr. Kane said, without preamble. We need your distribution network. Lady, I don't distribute anything for free, Victor replied. It's artificial left eye cycling through threat assessment protocols, especially not to people who are supposed to be dead. Captain Thorne stepped forward. We're not asking for charity. We're offering you a chance to be remembered as something other than a scavenger lord when history judges what happened next. Victor laughed, a sound like grinding metal. History, Captain. In case you haven't noticed, we're living in the aftermath. Of history, there's no one left to write the books. The pale being spoke then, its voice carrying harmonics that made Victor's cybernetic implants resonate uncomfortably. There will be. If you help us, there will be generations to remember your choice. And what choice is that exactly? Victor? A scab! Dr. Kane activated a holographic projector, filling the space between them with genetic sequencing data and population projections. The choice to save humanity, not preserve it, save it, transform it. Give it a future that doesn't end in sterile extinction. Victor studied the data streams, his enhanced processing systems, translating the scientific notation into practical implications. You're talking about genetic engineering on a species level? That kind of biotechnology doesn't exist anymore. It does, the being said. My people have perfected it. But implementation requires infrastructure, security, and most importantly, willing subjects. The network you control could provide all three willing subjects, Victor repeated. You mean the refugees, the settlers, the people barely surviving in my territory? You want to use them as test subjects for alien experimentation. We want to offer them a choice, Captain Thorne said. Continue the slow decline toward extinction, or take the risk of becoming something new. Victor deactivated his targeting systems and leaned back in his chair. What's in it for me? And don't give me noble speeches about species survival. I deal in concrete terms. Dr. Kane met his augmented gaze directly. Partnership. It's not just in the transformation process, but in what comes after. The new humans will need leaders who understand both the old world and the new one. People who can bridge the gap between what we were and what we're becoming. And if the process fails, Victor asked, if your genetic miracle turns people into monsters or kills them outright, then humanity dies as it lived, the being replied, making choices in the face of uncertainty. Victor considered the offer, running probability calculations through his enhanced neural network. The status quo led to extinction with mathematical certainty. This proposal offered unknown risks with potential benefits beyond calculation. In the ruins of civilization, those were better odds than most decisions carried. I'll need guarantees, he said finally. Safety protocols, consent procedures, compensation for families if things go wrong, and I want oversight authority. My people, my rules. Agreed, Dr. Kane said immediately. Victor stood, his mechanical joints worry softly. Then welcome to the most insane business venture in human history. Nix Chenvolkov had been 17 when the terraforming networks failed, turning climate control systems into weapons of mass destruction, a 29. She existed in a hybrid state between human consciousness and digital architecture. Her neural implants, allowing direct interface with the ancient automated systems that still hummed beneath Neo-Singapore's ruins. The integration had cost her normal human interaction, but it had made her invaluable to anyone who needed the dead machines to wake up. The call had come through channels she hadn't accessed in years. Emergency protocols built into the original terraforming infrastructure, designed to activate only in cases of species-level extinction events. The message was simple. Report 2 coordinates in the deep underground. Authorization. Genetic Preservation Protocol 7. Nix descended through maintenance tunnels that predated the collapse, following power lines that still carried current from geothermal plants buried kilometers below the surface. The meeting point was an access chamber for the primary terraforming control nexus, space that should have been impossible to reach without administrative clearance that no longer existed. For figures waited in the chamber's blue-lit sterility. She recognized Captain Thorne from underground network chatter, the soldier who had kept patrolling even after command went silent. The woman introduced herself as Dr. Mira Kane, a name that made Nix's implants ping with recognition from archived research databases. The third human was Victor Reeves, whose reputation in the scavenger networks preceded him like a shockwave. The fourth figure made Nix's cybernetic systems struggled to parse. Clearly not human, but possessing technology that interfaced seamlessly with the chamber's control systems. When it spoke, her neural implants translated not just the words, but layers of meaning that human language couldn't convey. Engineer Chenvolkov, the being said. Your integration with the terraforming networks makes you uniquely qualified for what we require. Which is what exactly? Nix asked, her voice carrying the slight mechanical undertone that marked deep neural integration. Dr. Kane stepped forward, her expression mixing hope with desperation. We need you to activate the Genesis Protocol. Nix felt her blood temperature drop. The Genesis Protocol was theoretically a complete planetary reset designed to transform atmospheric composition, soil chemistry, and environmental parameters to support non-human life forms. It had been built into the terraforming systems as a final option, something so destructive that its activation required simultaneous authorization from 12 separate command centers. The Genesis Protocol would sterilize 90% of the planet's surface, Nix said flatly. Everything dies except what's specifically engineered to survive the new environment. Everything dies anyway, Victor interjected. The difference is whether something new gets to live afterward. The pale being approached one of the control interfaces, its elongated fingers moving across surfaces that responded with patterns of light. The protocol can be modified. Instead of sterilization followed by receding, we can create transformation. The atmospheric and biochemical changes will be gradual, designed to support both existing life and new genetic variants. Nix interfaced directly with the chamber's systems, downloading terabytes of technical specifications in milliseconds. Her consciousness expanded through the network, touching sensors and processors scattered across the continent. The scope of what they were proposing hit her like a physical blow. This isn't just genetic engineering, she said. You're talking about remaking the entire biosphere. The energy requirements alone would drain every power source on the continent. We have energy, the being replied. My people's ships have been stationed at the edge of your solar system for decades. The power transmission systems are already in place. Captain Thorne spoke for the first time since the introductions. What's the timeline? Nix ran probability calculations through her enhanced processing cores. If I start now, full system activation would take 72 hours. Right. Once I begin the sequence, there's no stopping it. The automated systems will take over, and even I won't be able to shut it down. And if hostile forces try to stop us, Victor asked. They won't be able to, Nix replied. The control systems are distributed across thousands of nodes.
I'll move destroying.
1, 10, Even 100 wouldn't matter. But there is one problem. She turned to face the group, her augmented eyes reflecting the chamber's blue glow. The activation process requires constant human oversight for the first 48 hours. Someone needs to be connected to the network continuously guiding the transformation parameters and monitoring system integration. That's someone being you, Dr. Kane said. Yes, and the process will likely kill me. The data flow required for planetary scale transformation will overload my neural implants. I might survive 6 hours of full interface. It's probably not 12. Definitely not 48. The silence that followed was broken only by the distant hum of power systems and the soft whisper of recycled air. Nick studied their faces, seeing the calculation behind their eyes, one life against the survival of the species. In the mathematics of extinction, it wasn't even a difficult equation. I'll do it, she said quietly. But I want to know that it matters, that what comes after will be worth the price. The being moved closer, and for a moment Nix's implants detected something like warmth in its alien features. What comes after will be more than survival. It will be evolution. Humanity will not just continue it, will transcend. Once, then turn toward the primary interface terminal. Then let's begin the end of the world. The transformation began at 0347 hours on a Tuesday. That would be remembered as the last day of baseline humanity. In the deep chambers beneath Neo-Singapore, Nix Chun-Volkov had been connected to the terraforming network for 18 hours. Her consciousness stretched across continental sensor grids, her neural implants burning through safeguards never intended for sustained planetary interface. Above ground, Captain Joss Thorne led defensive positions at the 3 primary access points to the underground complex. The activation of the Genesis protocol had triggered automated alerts throughout the remaining military networks, drawing every surviving authority unit to their location. Plasma fire lit up the ruins as corporate security forces, rogue military units, and desperate scavenger gangs converged on what they believed was either humanity's salvation or its final destruction. Contact, Eastern approach. Victor Reeves's voice crackled through the communication system he had jerry-rigged from salvaged equipment. His crews had established overlapping fields of fire throughout the underground passages, turning every corridor into a potential killing ground. 12 hostiles, military-grade weapons, advancing on sublevel 3. Dr. Myra Kane monitored the genetic transformation process from the medical bay. She had established next to the primary control chamber. The first test subjects, volunteers from Victor's network, who had chosen enhancement over extinction, were already showing cellular changes. Their DNA was incorporating keeper genetic sequences, cellular structures adapting to process the modified DNA, atmospheric compounds that would soon fill the planet's air. Transformation efficiency at 67%, she reported. Neural integration proceeding within acceptable parameters, but we're losing subjects to rejection syndrome faster than projected. The pale being that called itself Zephyr moved between the control stations with inhuman fluidity. Its own people's biotechnology interfacing directly with human systems. Through its efforts, the modification process was being refined in real time. Each failure teaching the system how to better integrate human and keeper genetics. The protocols are adapting, Zephyr announced. Success rates improving, but the planetary transformation must accelerate. My people detect massive military movement converging on this position. You have perhaps 6 hours before the complex is overrun. In the primary interface chamber, Nix floated in a suspension of conductive fluid. Her body connected to the terraforming network through dozens of neural links. Her consciousness had expanded beyond individual awareness, becoming a directing intelligence for systems spanning continents. She could feel the atmospheric processors awakening. Chemical factories buried in ocean trenches beginning production, with her control networks preparing to reshape global climate patterns. But she could also feel herself dying. Each hour of connection burned away more of her individual consciousness. Her human identity dissolving into the vast computational matrix required to manage planetary transformation. She had perhaps 4 hours of functional awareness remaining before the process consumed her entirely. Status report. Captain Thorne's voice reached her through layers of digital interface. Atmospheric modification at 42%. Nix, replied, her words emerging from speakers throughout the complex. Biochemical seeding proceeding ahead of schedule. But Thorne, we have a problem. The old nuclear failsafes are activating. The revelation hit the command center like a physical blow. Deep beneath the Earth's surface, it's automated systems installed during the final years of the old civilization were detecting the atmospheric changes as a hostile terraforming attack. Nuclear weapons buried in strategic locations around the globe were beginning their arming sequences. How long? Dr. Kane asked. 90 minutes until first detonation, Nix replied. The system will sterilize the planet rather than allow alien terraforming to proceed. Victor's voice cut through the tactical chatter. Can you stop it? Not stop it, but I can redirect it. Nix's consciousness touched the nuclear control networks. Finding pathways through systems designed to be impossible to hack, I can trigger simultaneous detonation of all warheads. The electromagnetic pulse will destroy the automated systems, but it will also accelerate the atmospheric transformation. You're talking about nuclear winter, Captain Thorne said. No, Zephyr interjected. Combined with our biotechnology, the radiation will serve as a catalyst. The new genetic structures can process radioactive isotopes as energy sources. It would kill baseline humans, will nourish the transformed. Dr. Kane looked around the chamber at faces that reflected the weight of the choice before them. We're talking about the end of the world as we know it. Complete, total transformation. Nothing will survive unchanged. Nothing survives anyway. Victor replied grimly. At least this way, something survives. Above them, the sound of plasma fire was getting closer as the defensive perimeters collapsed under overwhelming assault. Time was running out in every sense that mattered. Nix's voice came once more through the speakers. Fainter now, as her individual consciousness faded into the vast network she controlled. The choice has to be unanimous. Once I trigger the detonation sequence, there's no going back. Humanity. As we know, it ends today. One by one, they gave their consent. Captain Thorne, the soldier who had sworn to protect what remained of civilization, Dr. Kane. The scientist who had dedicated her life to preserving genetic diversity. Victor, the scavenger lord who had built power from the ruins of the old world. Zephyr, the alien being whose people had watched species rise and fall across the galaxy. Do it, Captain Thorne said finally. Around the world, nuclear fire blossomed in carefully calculated patterns, reshaping the planet's surface and atmosphere in a transformation that would take decades to complete. In the deep chambers beneath Neo-Singapore, the last baseline humans watched displays showing global radiation levels, atmospheric composition changes, and the first signs of new life adapting to a world that no longer belonged to the species that had created it. Nix Chen Volkov dissolved into the network completely, becoming the guiding consciousness for a planetary transformation that would birth a new form of humanity. Her last human thought was a simple recognition. Evolution had always required death to create life. Today, death and life had simply happened faster than usual. In the years that followed, the survivors would emerge to find a world transformed beyond recognition, populated by beings who carried human memories and dreams in bodies capable of thriving in the new reality. They were no longer Homo sapiens, but they were still human in all the ways that mattered. The last protocol had succeeded. Humanity lived, evolved, and continued its journey among the stars.